For this video, I'm going to be covering the core gameplay basics of Legends of Runeterra because some of you might be playing this game for the first time. For some of you, it might be your first card game ever. And this video is going to hopefully give you enough knowledge so that you can jump into the game and start enjoying it right away. Now, I'm going to start by showing you one of the starter decks. And when you start the game, you're going to get given 3 total starter decks. This one in particular is the Noxus and Shadow Isles starter deck. Decks contain cards from up to 2 regions. That can be a single region if you want, but this deck is containing cards from Shadow Isles and Noxus. Now there are 6 total regions in the game, and you can mix and match them as you want with the maximum of 2 regions being in your deck. Now, decks are 40 cards, and they can also contain up to 6 total champions, and that's because champions are very special cards. They're very powerful. They're also the only cards that currently level up. Now, how each champion levels up is going to be different from champion to champion, and that will be printed on the card. This particular starter deck is one that utilizes Elise. We can see that here. And if I right-click on Elise, it will kind of enhance her so that you can better read her, but it also means that you can mouse over certain abilities. For example, if you don't know what Fearsome does, you can go ahead and hover over it, and this will tell you what Fearsome does. But even more specifically, because she's a champion, it'll tell you what you need to do to level her up. I know that's a lot of information right out of the gate, but it will make more sense as we start playing through. But I wanted to start with what goes into a deck, because when we go into a game, when we start our first game against the AI, and we're going to go ahead and move to do that now, it's going to tell you the regions and the champions that your opponent is playing. So we're going to go ahead and start a game versus the AI so that I can not worry about timers and talk you through each phase. But you're going to see right here on the load screen, this tells us we're playing against the AI. The only champions in the AI's deck are Elise, and it also tells you the regions, which are the same regions that we're playing right now. So when you very first start a game, there's usually a timer here if it's against another player, but this is the starting hand phase, and this is also where you can mulligan cards. If you don't know what that means, it means you're shown 4 cards in this particular instance, and you get to choose if you want them in your starting hand or if you want to replace them. Usually here you want to replace cards that are more expensive because you won't be playing them until later in the game. So for example here, I'm going to go ahead and select this Brood Awakening to shuffle back. Now if you're a card game veteran, you're going to be tempted to click on these because a lot of games that's how you mulligan. Here you have to hit the replace button, just as a heads up. So once you've selected the cards that you want to shuffle back into your deck and draw a replacement, you're going to go ahead and hit OK, at which point you will do the shuffling and then the first round will begin. Now when each round starts, you draw 1 extra card for that round. So you're going to see we're going to jump up to 5 total cards in hand in just a moment. There we go. And we also get 1 mana. So mana is how you play these cards. You get 1 mana per turn, and it always refills to the maximum at the start of each turn, or start of each round is the right term, excuse me. So right now we have our 1 mana, and we can use that to play units or cards that are called spells, and I'll talk about the difference between those two in a moment. The other things that you need to know before you get started are that both players are going to start at 20 health essentially. So these represent your nexus, and you're trying to get the other player down to 0 because that's how you win the game. If for whatever reason you were eating food or you went to the bathroom during the loading phase and you missed what champions your opponent was playing from that loading screen, don't fret. You can also click on your opponent's deck and it will give you factions, champions, and cards left in their deck as well. So this is always accessible at any given time. Now, we're going to go ahead and play a card, and we're going to play a unit. This costs 1, so we can play it. And you just drag the card out and it's going to go to this like bench area.
Reporting in.
And then once you've played a card, it goes to your opponent's option to play a card. So they've opted to play a unit as well. So essentially, whenever you play a card, there's going to be this back and forth kind of flow in the game. And a round ends when both players pass. So I could pass here if I didn't want to take any more actions, and then if my opponent passed, we would start round 2. However, I started with the attack token. This means I'm the aggressor. It also means that I'm allowed to attack on my turn or during this round. This token flip-flops from round to round, so next round I will not have this, but my opponent will. Unlike other card games, In this game, every card can attack the turn it comes into play. So if you're a card game veteran and you're coming from Magic the Gathering, or you're coming from Hearthstone, this is like every card having haste or charge. So even though I just played this card, I can attack with it, and there's no reason for me not to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag this out onto the field. Okay, so like this is like your bench, and then this is where you're declaring your attackers. This is the battlefield. And once I've done this, I can go ahead and hit attack. If I had more minions, more creatures to attack with, I would drag them all out and then hit attack. Positioning and order does matter for some effects, so keep that in mind. But we're going to go ahead and start the attack. My opponent gets to choose blocks. In this case, they're going to block here. And when I hit OK, combat is going to happen. Now, during combat, I'm going to deal damage equal to my attack value. They're going to deal damage back to my unit equal to their attack. And then these are health values. And as you'll see, I will go down to being a 3-1, and this unit will die. If you're ever kind of curious, or you're saying, hey, I want to know what's going to happen because maybe there's a lot of complex interactions on the board, you can also mouse over this eye, and it will give you a preview of how things are going to resolve. So right now you can see it's saying, okay, that unit here is going to die. You'll also notice there's a spider appearing on their bench, and that's because this unit in particular, if I do this, has a last breath, meaning that this ability takes effect when the unit dies, of summon a spiderling. So that's what this eye is telling us. It's saying, okay, once combat resolves, this is exactly what's going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Things resolve. Now they've passed, and you can see this here. So now, instead of this saying pass, it says end round. Because again, once both players have passed, excuse me, I swear I haven't been drinking while I filmed this. Sorry for the slur. Once both players have passed, the round ends. And then we go to the next round. So they get the attack token, we both get 1 more mana, and our mana refills.
There's nothing to fear.
They start with priority or initiative, if you will, and they start by playing a unit, and then we can play cards in response. Now, we're going to go ahead and play a spider. And when it comes into play, it will summon a spider. You'll notice that our bench here is starting to fill up. You can have a maximum of 6 units on your bench at any given time. So there is a limit, and once you get to that full 6, you cannot play extra cards until something on your bench dies, so keep that in mind. Last round we were the attacker. This time around we get to be the blocker. So this is what it looks like when somebody is attacking you. Now this unit here can't block, so you'll notice that it does not highlight blue like these other units, right? And it obviously will yell at you if you try to block with it. So instead, we're going to assign some blockers like this. Now you can move stuff around, but over here, because of their ability, I can't actually block that, but nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and block. It's a nice thing about the interface. If you're trying to do something you're not allowed to do, it has no problem with telling you, hey, you're not allowed to do that. So now it comes back to us. We don't have any mana, we can't attack, we don't have any actions, so we'll go ahead and pass. They'll pass and we'll go to round 3. And you'll see that we go up to 3 mana. We each draw a card. Now, this time around, even though I would normally want to, for example, play the Undying, I'm going to purposefully not spend all of my mana, because there's something really fun and interesting in Legends of Runeterra, and that is spell mana. Yeah, we're going to attack with both, because I might just go ahead and use this.
It will all be over soon.
Alright, so they are assigning a blocker and they are playing a spell. We're going to go ahead and play our own spell here as well to do basically the same thing they're doing, which is poke this. And you'll notice that these are lining up here. Spells in this game come in one of 3 flavors. So if I go ahead and I right click on this, you'll see that it has this boot here and it says fast. This is a fast spell. Spells are either burst, fast, or slow. If you're coming from Magic the Gathering, think split second, instant, or sorcery. But if you have no idea what that means, what it means is that a burst spell resolves right away. Your opponent does not get a chance to respond in any way, shape, or form. You play the burst spell and it just happens. A fast spell is a spell that can be played during combat or during the regular round, but your opponent does get a chance to respond. So you'll notice this is a fast spell, but it didn't go off right away. I get a chance to respond, and I'm responding by playing my own fast spell. A slow spell cannot be played during combat. It has to be played before we get to this part where units are on the field. So those are the differences in terms of your spells and speeds. Now again, we've got a lot of complex interactions going on, and you might be saying to yourself, hey, how is this going to look when it resolves? If you mouse over the eye, you can see everything's going to die, and we're both going to get a spiderling as a result. Things always resolve left to right in Runeterra. This includes spell resolution, so mine will go off, then this one will go off. It also means attacking and blocking. So when you have units that are all lined up, the units that are here will attack and kill each other first before the ones over here. And that does matter because you will have some units that will trigger things when other units die. So for example, if you have a hero that levels up when they see units die, Thresh, for example, fits that. If Thresh is over here and during combat you have combat, 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 and all of those units die, then Thresh will level up before it gets to him. So it'll be his leveled up version when he gets to combat. So again, order does matter in Runeterra. Pay attention to that. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And again, we're going to see this resolve, then this resolve, and then combat will resolve. And then after that, it becomes our opponent's turn. So they're playing now a slow spell. Because combat has been resolved, they're playing a slow spell. If I had a fast spell, I could then respond to this or reply to this, but I don't, so we're going to hit OK, and this is going to go ahead and resolve for them. Now, I could play this before, but again, as I said before, I'm going to pass on purpose because I'm going to show you spell mana. And what spell mana is any leftover mana you have goes over into these slots. So you can have a maximum of 3 spell mana that carries over from turn to turn. And this is mana that can only be used to cast spells. So I'm going to pass just so you can see what that looks like. You'll see it goes here, and now it's a 1. So right now I have 4 mana that I can use to play on any units I like. Or I could spend up to 5 mana if I was casting a spell in particular. Now I don't have anything that fits that bill right now, sadly. Now another thing to note is when you've declared a blocker, if your unit dies, it is still considered to have blocked the unit across from it. So what's going to happen here is when I hit OK, this is going to kill my spiderling, but this unit is still not going to deal damage to my nexus. These ones will. Any unblocked unit, when it goes through combat, will deal damage to the nexus. And again, you gotta keep your nexus alive and try to kill your opponents. But you'll notice there's going to be like a blue highlighted space here that just represents that this is still blocked. So I take 2 damage and I go down to 17. Now it's after combat, so we can still play things back and forth. And we're going to do just that. But I'm going to keep this 1 spell mana. You'll notice I can't play this because this is not a spell. But because I didn't spend this, it will still carry over from round to round. So spell mana stays until you use it. So now this round here, you'll notice I have 5 mana, but because I have this 1 spell mana, I can, if I want, play this spell. And we're going to do that just to showcase it. Now this is a slow spell, so I have to play this before combat. And they're going to try to respond a couple of different ways here by essentially killing my other 2 units. That's not very kind of the AI here. Now, we could choose to attack with this and it's just going to end up trading even with them, and I think that's fine. I expect the AI to just block with their 1/1s, but it's kind of cleaning up the board. And this is basically the flow of the game, as you may have figured out by now. Every round, your mana goes up by 1. Every round, who the attacker is goes back and forth. Now, some things to note about gameplay as well. Just because you have the attack token naturally from the round, it does not mean that your opponent can still not gain an attack token. There are certain cards in the game, for example, that allow you to attack more than once if you start with the token. Or if I had a card right now, for example, I could give myself an attack token even though they've had one, and you can both attack in the same round. Okay, so they are playing this slow spell, trying to stun my unit. We're going to respond with a fast spell. Again, resolves left to right. And hit OK. And this is going to deal 1 to all enemies and heal my Nexus for 3. So this is a very good response. And we're going to go ahead and play this to be a potential blocker here. And they don't want to run into our little 1/1, so they pass. And now it comes back to us as the attacking unit. So Darius here is a champion. And as we can see, if I right click on him, this is how you bring up this menu. He will level up when the enemy Nexus has 10 or less health. When he levels up, he becomes this version of Darius, and all copies of Darius in your deck become this version. So when a champion levels up, it levels up every copy in your deck. Now, another reason that I point out the words every copy is because sometimes when you're running more than one copy of a legend in your deck, you'll draw more than one, but you can only have one in play at any given time. So if I have Darius in play and I draw a second Darius card, the game will transform Darius into this Decimate for as long as I have one on the field. Now, if my Darius on the field dies, then this Decimate will transform back into a regular Darius. But they do this so that you don't have dead cards in your hand, meaning if I've got a Darius in play and I draw a Darius, they don't want that to just be a card that you can't do anything with. So your champions will transform into a special card when that happens. But enough with that. We're just going to go ahead and attack. Before we play anything, we're just going to go ahead and attack our opponent. They're going to block here, but this is okay because this Undying card keeps reviving at the start of each round, and it gets bigger for every time it's died. So we're okay with this trade. And we sneak in some damage. They're going to stun our unit. I'm going to go ahead and let this go. I was considering actually killing this, but I think instead we're just going to stun this one back so that we've got a blocker for their unit next round. This stun this round doesn't matter because combat has already resolved, but this is mostly about just answering with a blocker and saving this for something more dastardly should it arrive. And again, back and forth. You will notice that there are only so many slots here for mana, and that's because you cap out at 10 mana and you also cap out at 3 spell mana. So you can't have more than 10 mana at any given time, and you can't have more than 3 spell mana at any given time. If you're coming from a game like Magic or other digital card games like The Elder Scrolls Legends, where you can have like never-ending mana, that's not the case here. There is a hard cap. So we're going to go ahead and try to drain this because we think this is spooky. And they're going to attack, and we're just going to go ahead and block here so that they trade with each other, because then we can turn around and play a Darius. And they have passed, so we'll end the round, and now it comes back to us where we can attack. Now, the interesting thing is that you can play cards both when you attack and also after you attack or before you attack. So if I wanted to play this unit here, I could, and I could still be able to attack with it this round. Or sometimes the right strategy is to attack before you play anything to limit what your opponent can do. So like if I play this and they have a unit, they might be able to play a big blocker to get in the way of our Darius. So to mitigate that, we're just going to go ahead and grab all of these and attack. And you'll notice that once this drops below 10, Darius levels up. Get a cool animation. Becomes this version. And then after combat, they start playing units. So again, if we would have played this first, they could have played this and blocked a couple of our units. So we avoided that by attacking first. Now they've passed. Now we have just regular Decimate. This is not Darius's Decimate. So again, if I right click on this, had I drawn the second Darius that's in this deck, I would know the difference because it specifically says Darius's Decimate. And it also has the extra text here of shuffle a Darius into your deck. This is just a regular Decimate, so this is just the card Decimate. And we're going to go ahead and end the round here.
I know what lurks in the shadows.
We'll play this Decimate now. This is just going to deal 4 damage. But mostly we're just buying time. So they declare some attackers. And we're going to answer that by trying to drain one of these. And then we only have 2 units that can block. We have our Darius, and then we have this little spiderling guy. We're going to block this here. And we're going to use Darius to block their Elise. Now, with all this mana in this card, they could have something that helps to kill Darius, but they don't. They're just going to drain from their own unit to try to increase their health a bit. They're getting pretty low. But there is always that risk. Whenever you're assigning blockers or you're going into combat and somebody has a bunch of mana, you have to be prepared for combat tricks. They might have a fast spell up their sleeve. So again, just like before, this could be another unit. We don't want them to play any more blockers than necessary. So we're going to go ahead and grab everything and make them attack. Now, one thing I do want to note, right, is that you may have noticed I am kind of dragging cards across from each other. On the PC, this is a shortcut. So if I grab a card like Darius, and I just left click on it, I can drag it out one by one like this, right? To get the order that I want. But if I want to get a specific order, but I want to do it all in one fell swoop, I can grab Darius, and then without letting go of my mouse button, I can hover over this card, and you'll see it kind of picks it up, and then this card, and then this one and this one. And it kind of grabs them all in a stack. Now when I let go here, they'll be in the exact order that I picked them up. So this is just a neat little time saver. And once this goes to 0 here, you're going to see a victory screen, and that's it. That is the basics for Legends of Runeterra. That is just a quick walkthrough versus the AI. Now, there's obviously a number of interactions that exist in the game. There's obviously a number of keywords. Champions have a bunch of different things. Those are all going to be more advanced mechanics, but as far as just understanding the basics, I think that this is a good walkthrough of showing you what to do, what to expect, kind of showing you how the round plays out, right? You play a card, then your opponent plays a card. Each round, somebody is naturally the attacker. Now, again, like all card games, this is just the core. If you're not familiar, if this is your first card game ever, the core gameplay experience for just about any card game is you establish a set of rules, and then every card breaks those rules one way or another. So if you see something and you're like, hey, I didn't know that they could do that, or they're not supposed to do that, make sure you right click on the card, read through what it does. Be sure to hover over keywords that you don't understand, etc., etc. But overall, this is the basic experience. Hopefully this helps you. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching and have fun.